Welcome to GyrlSense Season 6. I'm Maria del Carmen, your host. It's October and plenty of us are having the breast cancer awareness conversation. And so once again, GyrlSense will also have that conversation. I do want to welcome Elby Gonzalez-Schwapp. Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Awesome. A marriage and family therapist and breast cancer survivor herself. Elby, welcome to the GyrlSense show. I'm just very excited to have you here, and honestly, it's a privilege to have you here.
Oh, the privilege is mine to be here. Thank you.
No problem. So, I'm going to jump right in. So you've been, you've had a 20-year span career dedicated to public health, ironically, right? Or maybe not. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you consider home, and who do you name as family at your household? And you are working for the city of Hartford?
I do.
Have been. Okay. So tell us a little bit.
I do. So I am married to a wonderful gentleman for nearly 30 years.
Oh my goodness, awesome.
Home is, thank you. Home is right over the mountain in Simsbury.
Okay.
And we have been a part of that community for about 12 years now. Together we have 3 wonderful children. Home also has my mother-in-law, who has been with us for a very long time, for about 22 years now. And we've got just a really great community that we're a part of. And definitely happy to have been embraced by the community and the neighborhood that we come from. Family is from Puerto Rico. My mother's family was from Moca, and my father's family was from Ciales. My father migrated to the mainland when he was a teenager, and my mother was a New Yorican. She was born and raised in New York, and decided to bring her family to Connecticut. And I was born and raised in Connecticut, so Connecticut has been home my entire life. We did live in Pennsylvania for a little bit, but mostly Connecticut. And I have been a public health specialist for the last 20 years with the Department of Health and Human Services for the city of Hartford. Started out my career there working with grandparents who are raising their grandchildren. And then moved over to senior and community services, so working on the other side of social issues and health issues. And then the city decided that they wanted to move me to the younger side of the spectrum. And then I moved over to maternal and child health. And there I oversee programming for at-risk women who are of pregnancy, let's say, age. And my role is to make sure that women are linked to prenatal care and that we are ensuring that they receive the services that they need in order to have a pregnancy that's going to be a full-term pregnancy, because our goal is to reduce infant mortality in the city of Hartford. And then I've, changed shifts a little bit, and I'm also working with chronic health disease management as well. And so all important issues. And all issues that in one form or another, impact all of our lives.
Absolutely.
And so it's just been, a great opportunity, a great career, and the ability to sort of almost reinvent, right? As you go from one group to another, you can't get bored because the work is, so intense, but it's also very much rewarding.
I bet. I was just going to say, what diversity in generations to begin with, right? And so, like, working with the mentality and skill sets today into the modern day, modern day with the elders compared to the youth, today, and so, how special is that? That is really, really special. I recently learned of a facility in Massachusetts where they house elders as well as the youth. And then they have the elders be like in-house parents or grandparents of the youth, so they'll learn from each other. Yes. So that was like a first thing for me. So I'm listening to you, and I'm like, maybe they don't interact, but you bringing in what you learn from your experience with the elders, but that's a switch. Was that like a code switching for you as far as like having those conversations?
It was definitely a learning curve, that I will say. But I think ultimately when, your heart is in the place of serving and helping others, you do whatever it is that you have to do in order to make sure that,
you meet them where they're at.
Exactly.
Right? You just meet them where they're at.
Exactly.
So do you come from a background of public health, like where your parents or family members, or what enticed you? How did you get into public health?
So I will say that I come from a background of public service.
Public service. Okay.
There's a lot of public service. So between, law enforcement and teaching and the healthcare profession. And, I will say that public health is just sort of that little arm on the side that says, well, let's talk about this. Let's teach individuals about, what does it mean to manage your chronic health disease? What does it mean to prevent, certain birth outcomes, right? What does it mean to advocate, to make sure that our streets are safe, right? Public health is like one of those things where it's not just one thing that you're focused on. It's, social issues, environmental issues, it's policy changing and advocating for policy changes that makes the work so rewarding. But it really is, just dedicating your time to say, everybody deserves to be healthy. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic background. It doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter, how you pray, right? Yes. Everyone deserves to be healthy.
Absolutely.
And we know that there are things in our environment. There are things even in some of our cultures that are passed down to us, right? That impact, how we see the world, how we engage, how we eat, how we prepare foods.
Sure.
And oftentimes, because those are things that are passed down to us, don't necessarily ask the question of why. Right. It's always been this way, right? This is how my mother did it. This is how my grandmother did it. This is how my aunts and uncles did it. And so this is how I do it. Exactly.
It's pretty sacred. You don't detour from those culturally traditions, So,
right. Right. Because it's part of our makeup, right? It's part of our identity. Yes. And with public health, it really is having some conversations about maybe that fried food isn't really the best thing for us, right? And so maybe we shouldn't fry our food every single day. Right. Maybe that can be a treat, right? And, I even think about, tobacco use, right? And in some of our families, and, there's tradition that is connected to, tobacco use. But what we know today with science, right? What we know today in the medical field of how tobacco is impacting our health in the short term and in the long term, it's having those conversations too. We know that, tobacco is impacting women while they're pregnant, and those babies are coming earlier, or they're coming just a little bit smaller than we would like for them to come to us. And so it's having those conversations about what are things that we can do. Everyone has their own choices to make, right?
Yes.
But to be informed.
Right.
is basically what public health is to inform people that this is what the science tells us. This is what the medical field is telling us. And we're leaving this world a little too early because of some of our behaviors.
And things that we can control.
Exactly.
We have full control of it, right?
Exactly.
So what's interesting is you know, having the conversations when I look at the generations, you know, the difference in generations is really reconditioning our elders and breaking those cycles. And that can be quite difficult because, you know, it's what they know, you know, it's all that they know.
Right.
And then also having the same conversation with, you know, the younger generations. And I can almost bet, because, you know, if I fell under the, you know, that age group, my first thing was like, there's no way. This is how my mom did it. You know, like, there's no way. So breaking those cycles from either generation, it is a conversation to be had. And it's also all of those topics and items that you just listed, those are everyday things. They're not going away.
Right.
They're not going away. So it's very important to have individuals like yourself in those roles, to have those professional conversations with the clients or you know, patients, clients,
with the residents, with the community, because that's really what it's about, right? And it's about taking information that can seem very scientific, right? And to say, we're just having a regular conversation. We're breaking those words down into words that are consumable and relatable, so that we understand it. Because if we don't understand it, that's happening over there. That doesn't impact me. That's happening over there. But the reality of it is that, you know, the foods that we're eating, right? Even some of the neighborhoods that we are growing up in, the tobacco that we are smoking really is taking time off of our lives.
Yes.
And it's filling our bodies with disease. And, you know, every child deserves to have a parent present.
Sure.
And when we have disease that takes our parents away a little bit too early, because of choices that we're making, because of norms that have been, you know, socially accepted, and being able to, you know, just talk to the community about that, to say, let's just sit and talk about, you know, this food that you're eating right now, and knowing that in some of our communities, you know, we have food deserts. Right? We don't have access to food is not the same for everyone. And those are important conversations to have. And those are areas that are important for us to seek, you know, change, and to advocate for change in our communities, and to help work with the people in the community to find their voice, so that they can say, I want a good grocery store in my neighborhood. I want access to good food in my neighborhood.
Which is, you know, it just gives me, like, my mind goes through gymnastics, just thinking, why does one have to even ask? You know, why does it? I mean, I just had this conversation. You know, it's really political at the end of the day, right? I literally just had this conversation this week. You know, and so it's really sad. But I want to play a little devil's advocate, or not really devil's advocate, but have you had the combat or the challenge? Has anyone challenged you? I guess, you know, either generation. You know, because I can hear them. Like, I can hear the elders. No, you know, my grandfather lived until 100 years old, and he smoked every day of his life, or, you know, this is the food he ate. So I'm going to, you know, when you get into those types of conversations, how do we turn that? Like, how do we make it? How do we put the scientific, you know, the facts into layman's terms, so that they can actually understand it in layman's terms, you know, like.
And they have to want to hear the message as
Right.
well, because if we're closed off and this is how we've always done it, and I think the thing to remember too, it's not just one thing, right? It's this plus this plus this plus this. And so the very best that we can do is really just present it to them in a way that is consumable, that is understandable. And it's up to them to make the decisions that they feel that are right for themselves. Right? I'm not here to beat it over anyone's head. But if you want to meet me for a conversation, I'm willing to join you. Exactly. And if I can help lead you into other areas so that you can get more information for yourself, whether that be with your, primary care physician or whatever, the area is, if we can help to connect you to someone else to help you to answer those questions, then we're going to do that for you.
Awesome. Is there a particular story or stories that you can remember that you carry with you where every day I know you make a difference every single day, but is there any one particular story that really, keeps you grounded and reminds you why you do what you do?
I will say that early on in my career, when I started working with grandparents raising their grandchildren, and the reasons they were, in this place, in their life was varied. It wasn't just one thing, right? But I remember when I went in to take my first job, right, or to see if this group would allow me into their graces. I remember a grandmother said to me, how are you going to tell me how to be a grandparent raising my grandchild? You don't even seem old enough to be a mom yourself. And I was a mom. I had 2 children at that time, but I guess the genes were looking good then.
They still are. They still are.
Thank you. And I said to her, you know what? I can't tell you how to be a grandmother, but as a woman, I know what it is, right, to experience challenges. I know what it's like to feel hurt. I know what it's like to feel like I don't know quite where to go. And I said, and that's the support that I can give you, that you're not on this journey on your own. And I know that you're busy with those grandkids and you may not have the time to fish through and dig through, the internet to find some of the resources that you may need, but let me do that for you. And it was such a humbling experience, at that point in time, because it really was sort of that generational challenge. But it was also, making sure that I wasn't coming in with that sort of expert mentality.
The new sheriff or...
Exactly. It was, to make sure that I was coming in that, playing field of I'm not here to take over. There's no way, that I would even fathom, thinking of doing that. But the work that we did, we created Grand Families Housing, right, through this work where we had buildings that were resurrected in the north end of Hartford. And we added social workers that were going to be on the campus, and we had computer lab and a homework lab. And so this became a community for these grandparents so that if they were raising their grandchildren, they had additional support that was right there in the community. They didn't have to get in the car to go someplace else. It was right there. And so early on, that was, significant for me because it was looking at the future, right? And looking at how do we help these women who had already raised their children and they were back at this place again. And how do we make that just a little bit easier for them? And so I can say early on, that was, very, very rewarding, very impactful. beautiful. And across the spectrum, you know, we've had moms who have come in, you know, pregnant and not having, you know, much. Their world just turned upside down. And just to see sort of that inner fight within them, you know, to be with child and to say, before this baby comes, I'm going to make sure that I have a home. I'm going to make sure that things are stable. I think to watch, to witness people and be a part of that journey with them is the reward, because you see the trajectory of life changing for them. And that alone is a reward.
And what a beautiful statement, right? And what a beautiful experience to, as you say, witness, you know, and not just once, but over and over again. Now, are those services still in place today?
The Grand Families Housing is still in service today. Yes, it is. And, you know, the work that we do in the city of Hartford with prenatal women, we've done this work for over 35 years. 35 years. So the city is definitely invested in the work. And even the work, you know, that we do with, you know, chronic disease management, you know, and you know, working with different local healthcare facilities and different community partners so that we can have these conversations, so that we could, you know, have cooking sessions, right? And learn how to take those typical foods, you know, that come from our, you know, families of origin and just tweak them just a little bit. Let's not fry it. Let's try out this air fryer thing, or let's see how we could bake this just a little bit. And, you know, not to totally take it away, but to say we can't have that with the regularity.
That's awesome. And so with all of that said, do you know, and you don't have to be like to the exact, but do you know if in fact we statistically, where are we? Like, is it still as it was before when you first started? Is it worse now? You know, as far as, are there more grandparents raising their grandchildren now? Are there or equal, or did it go down? And same thing with the young women, you know, with child. You know, where are we with that?
So I think there's sort of these ebbs and flows that sort of happen. It's like we do good for a couple of years and then, you know, we go down. And I think there's a number of things that impact that, right? There's funding that impacts it. Funding gets pulled away. And so when funding gets pulled away, those services that were preventive support services to families then get removed. And so, you know, as they get removed, then it just sort of makes things off balance again. But I think with grandparents, you know, historically, grandparents have been a part of you know, that multi-generation of raising families, right? This is just a little bit of a shift in that what we have is grandparents who are serving in that primary role versus that supportive role. And we've seen the numbers go, you know, up and down with that. I think when we have certain environmental or social issues, you know, with whether it be high drug use or, you know, just individuals who, you know, just may be challenged, may need a little bit more time to get life in the place that they want it to be, that sometimes they're still growing up, is how I'll say it. And so, you know, being able to be a full-time parent to their children, you know, isn't always what they can do at that moment in time. And so you'll see those numbers go up and down. And then what we'll also see with women, high-risk women who are of low socioeconomic status, who don't have a really good support system, who don't have access to, you know, healthy food, whose lives are just not very stable, we will find that the infant mortality rate will also go up and down. And in our African American and in our Latino community, we sort of see those numbers a little bit higher within the city of Hartford. Within our inner cities in general, we tend to see that. If you look at the state of Connecticut as a whole, we look very well. But when you look at our inner cities where there's just a little bit more challenging issues, you'll see that the numbers of infant mortality will go up. And so programs such as, the ones that we have are really designed to really be that sort of support to women and to make sure that they are reducing any barriers that they may have, right? That we're connecting them to services that they know is available to them. And what we've seen in our program has been that we have, in the last 7 years since I've been there, we have 0 infant deaths in our program. And so we know the services work. Just a matter of getting additional funding so we can get more, home visitors to do the work that this small but mighty, laborious group of women do each and every day. They're phenomenal. They're a phenomenal group of women who have really dedicated themselves. And they're women who come from the community. And so they can connect with the community. They understand the language, right? They understand the barriers. They understand the cultures. They're not afraid of it. I think oftentimes what we'll find is that when someone doesn't look like me, when someone doesn't talk like me, and I hear them talking in a way that's unfamiliar to me, it can be uncomfortable. And I may have some biases and some judgment that I may cast on those individuals and may make certain phone calls that may impact that mom with that small child. And so the idea really is to have a team of women who really understand the population and aren't afraid of, when we're just a little bit more energetic.
You gotta love us.
We do. But I think what I really enjoy about the work, particular with our home visitors who are providing support to women, is that it's almost like sisters helping sisters, right? It's the aunties and it's the older cousins, exactly. That it's like, been there, done that. I so get that. I can help you through that. Let me teach you something if you're willing to. So it's, great rewarding work. But we see the numbers, going up and down, and we see, infant mortality in the city of Hartford. It will go between 10 and 12% of every 1,000, babies that are born. We're seeing babies that are leaving this world a little bit too early. And part of it is, mom just didn't get the prenatal care that she needed, or didn't have access to certain foods, or just certain services, and that just created high levels of stress for her, and high levels of stress while you're caring doesn't really help a whole lot.
Adds to the circumstance.
Exactly.
And so during the pandemic, every household was impacted. Particularly, I don't have school children, but I had coworkers who, we saw it all on TV. Everyone's trying to work from home, and you had the kids in the background, and all of this, and it was hard to put in that infrastructure of working in those. In that environment, and that's for the individuals, not receiving these supports. I cannot even imagine from the individuals that you service, was it even twice-fold impactful for them, knowing that, will these services go away? Like, can I go to this service? Can I go over here? Can I get my foods? So how is that for them during that period of time?
So I think right? Initially, everyone was trying to reconfigure themselves and figure out how do we still do these services and provide them in a safe way.
Yes.
And so we were definitely, in that same boat.
Okay.
The good thing was we had things like Zoom, right?
Yeah.
That we could, video chat with our family. So we weren't
Okay.
able to, be in the same physical space
Sure.
because
Right.
especially early on, everyone
Right.
was trying to be
Mhm.
safe.
Mhm.
But we did do a lot of check-in telephone
Okay.
calls
Okay.
with them. And then when we all sort of figured out, how we could use Zoom and how we could use Teams and, all of these other video platforms,
Sure.
that's what sort of
Okay,
helped
good.
carried us through. And I can tell you that during that time, we also created a breastfeeding support group for women because those women were isolated at home, trying to figure out this whole new way of, feeding their babies.
Right.
And so, I can say that that was something that was really nice that came out of the pandemic, that we still offer that today to women. So it makes it, a lot more easier. But it was tough. It was, trying to figure out who is doing what, where can we pick up, how do we pick up? I remember we were creating protocols if we were going to drop off food or diapers to families. It was just like, okay, we're not going into the house. We're going to call you. We want you to look out the window. We're putting the bags at your front door. We're going to walk back to the car. You open up the front door and wave that you got them.
Right.
But we made it work. We were creative and we made it work. And, thankfully we're back to services, the way that we offered them pre-COVID.
Okay.
But still, taking, certain protocols,
Sure.
if anyone is sick, then we're not going to go into the home, those types of things. But it was definitely a challenge.
Yeah, because you start to think you kind of everyone felt handicapped by it. It was new. No one really experienced it. There was no handbook or
Right.
anything to reference by. Right. Polio was a long time ago, maybe sometimes way before most of our time. So we weren't there to witness that. Right. But I that's what always like really captured my heart. Like here I am at home. I'm okay. I'm not okay, but I'm okay because I have a home. I have support and so forth. But what about those that didn't have the support or don't have the support? Before this hit, who's taking care of them? Right. So that always played, and that's the psychology, the mental challenges that we all went through and witnessed, also on the television and the news, because that's all we could see. Right. That's all I could do all day. So I'm very glad, and it's very heartwarming to know that they weren't forgotten. No. At least not here, not in the city of Hartford. They weren't forgotten. So that's really, thank you for sharing that. And I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. Again, you've been in public service or public health, for your entire career, one way or the other. And last year, speaking of the pandemic, on top of everything else that was going on, your life took a really big change for you. Went from your norm to something new for yourself. You received the news that you had breast cancer. So just walk us through that journey, if you will. Particularly, in I would still say the worst of times of all the time. So how was that like? Well, before we get there, where were you? At that time, and what can you remember about that day?
So I will say that the day that I got the news, I had been through a series of tests. Up until that point. It was several months that I had been undergoing various biopsies and MRIs. When I got the news, I think there was a part of me that was stunned
Sure.
And there was a part of me that was angry.
Mm-hmm.
And yet there was a part of me, and I don't know how to describe it, except that I just knew that I was going to be okay. Like there was a part of me that had like this calm.
Sure.
And I remember just sort of sitting with that for a little bit, because prior to my diagnosis, I had already sort of been on this journey of, changing my lifestyle, right? I had, started exercising more. I had changed, how I was eating things, how I was preparing foods at home. And so I was already sort of on this change, right? I was on this other wave.
Sure.
And so to receive this news, I think that was a part of me that was angry. And what was also difficult was that my younger sister, a few months prior, had also received a diagnosis as well. And she had already been on her journey. And I thought I was just going to be the sister that was going to be supportive of her, right?
Yes.
Like watch the kids,
Oh,
do the groceries for her,
yes.
do the phone calls to check in on her. And I thought, I was doing my part as a sister to be as supportive as I could.
Is she local?
And she is. She is. And so when I got the news, it was just like, oh. But I knew, I really call it a sixth sense.
Sure.
I just knew that I was going to be okay. And so then I got mission focused, and I was going to learn about this disease and learn about, this new diagnosis that I had. And I was going to advocate for myself because that's the background that I have, right? I was going to figure out, I wasn't just going to go with, the first diagnosis.
Right.
And so I went for a second opinion.
Yes.
And that's a process, right? Because you're going to a different healthcare provider and you've got to, get an appointment and, all of those things. And then I went to a third. And along the way, I just took a dive into, what is this? Why did this, happen? I had genetic testing that told me this wasn't something that was in my genes. It wasn't something that was in my sister's genes, right? But coincidentally, we both were diagnosed within, months apart of one another.
This is your family history?
And this is,
Okay.
This is, and so, it was important for me to have an understanding of what this was and what were the things that I had control, right? That I could do to take care of my body and to prevent this.
Sure.
And so the journey, began, once I got that third diagnosis or that third opinion. And I had a really solid understanding of, what my treatment plan was going to be. Then I said, okay, I'm in.
Okay.
I'm in. And, I am happy to say that, I'm in my third phase of treatment. I've had surgery, I've had radiation, and, now I'm on hormone therapy where I'll be on that for 5 years.
Yes.
But I feel great. And, have just dedicated myself to just making permanent changes, right, in my life. And so what I eat, what I consume, I'm definitely thinking about that. Definitely eating a lot more fruits and vegetables than I ever was, right, before. And even the types of meat that I eat, making sure that they're more clean, that they're not filled with a lot of, antibiotics that, so just making, very thoughtful, decisions on what I'm going to, put into my body. Definitely a lot more physically active, than I was before.
This we know.
Yes. So, I have to say that I have a great group of women that I've connected to, and love, what the group is all about. It's called Latinas in Motion, and it really is about, just being physically active, right? Knowing that in the Latino community, we have high rates of chronic disease and heart disease, that it is so important for us to be physically active. So to be amongst a group of women who, whatever their motion is, right? There's a group of us that run, right? And there's some that really run. I have a lot of respect for them because they are long distance runners. But, then there are others that, walking is where their motion is at, or yoga is where their motion is at, working out, at home. And this group of women has been, just phenomenal cheerleaders in helping me to stay active.
That's
checking
great.
in.
Yes.
Checking in. When I go a little quiet for a little bit, there's a little text message.
Sure.
Hey girl, hey, how you doing?
Yes, I did have the privilege and honor to actually have Latinas in Motion on the GyrlSense show as well. So a group of them, we met at Bushnell Park and we did a taping there. And I'm also proud to say that my cousin's wife is actually the captain for
the group.
So very, very familiar. I have been very bad because I am a member. But I see all the posts on the private page, but I never report.
I'm not the best reporter either. I will tell you, I go through like these, ebbs and flows. Like sometimes I'm like really good, like, yes, I'm posting today. I'm posting again tomorrow. And then there's like weeks where I'm not posting, but I am active, but maybe not as active as I was before. But, at the end of the day, they're just a great group.
It is. And at the end of the day, that support, that genuine support is really matters, right? Exactly. For me, it's just a matter of management. Like I have one page that I need to manage, and I cannot, or maybe two that I need to manage with the girls. Like I cannot be more than 2 pages. I'm lost. When you were given the diagnoses, where did you find that courage? Where did you dig down and find that courage? Because I would imagine that as a woman, that as a mom, and you being a wife, unless your husband was there at that time, like where did you find, how deep did you have to dig, and how was that conversation with the rest of your family when you had to give them the news?
So I will say that prior to my diagnosis, 2 years prior, I had lost my mom to cancer, to gallbladder cancer. And the year before that, thank you. The year before that, she had colon cancer. So she had colon cancer, beat it, got a clear, bill of health, and then she had gallbladder cancer. And then my sister, prior to me had been diagnosed with breast cancer as well. And so I think that's the part of me that was a little bit cautious, right? Because there was a lot of questions that I had, answers that I didn't have. But I watched my mom, go through her battles. And her desire to live was unwavering. And I think that there was just this mama bear in me, right? That said, we're going to do this and we're going to get through this. Like, are we just going to be a rock star and just make this, you know, thing happen? But I think I just kind of had like that little voice, right? That was just letting me know it's going to be okay, right? Like, you're going to be okay. I think I am very fortunate in that when they found the cancer, it was very, very early, right? And because it was very early, like my treatment options were just so different, right? Compared to what other people are presented with. And I felt that that was a good thing that I had on my side. And I was just going to embrace that. And, you know, I think that I've had a very full and a very rewarding life. And so, and there have been things, you know, life hasn't always been easy, right? But I think that I've been through enough challenges, right? That somehow I have this like toolbox of
that muscle.
Grit. Exactly. And it's just like, girl, don't worry. You know, you've got this and you're going to get through this and everything is going to be okay. I think the thing that I feared was the reaction that I was going to get from my family.
Right. Because that's where we go, right? Because it's never about us.
Right.
And this time it's about us.
Right.
You know, it's always, you know, we always took care of them.
Right.
And so somehow, even though as something as, you know, catastrophic as this, and in my book, you know, we still feel guilty in a sense, like, am I going to be there for them? You know, like, I'm sure, you know, like, or, you know, you will, but during that process, who's going to be taking care of them? So I'm sure. So how did they, I know that we put that on ourselves and we don't need to, and it's not necessary because that's not what they're thinking.
Right.
They're like, we got you, Mom. You know, like, we're going to, like, they're thinking the same thing, but as women, it's just within our nature to do so. Right. So that creates like unnecessary added stress, you know, to the conversation, because we are worried about how they're going to receive the news, you know, because we don't want to have them worry. Right.
And so I set my family down, right, and had this very gentle and courageous conversation, right, with them, and allowed them to ask the questions that they had. And, you know, I think what was difficult was that there were still answers that I didn't have. But I did tell them that I would try to be as honest with them as possible and share with them along the way, you know, what I knew. You know, just did my best to be present and to be strong, you know, in front of them. But at the same time, having also those individual conversations with each of my, you know, children. And even with my husband, you know, he's the guy that, you know, wants to take care of everything, right? And doesn't want me to, you know, hurt or, you know, have any issues. And so I think it was hard also to watch him because he couldn't fix it. Right? This wasn't changing the tire or getting the oil change in the car or this wasn't any of that. This was beyond his ability to fix it. And watching him, you know, sort of struggle with that, you know, and a little bit.
That hurts us. It really hurts us when we see that, you know, from a spouse, you know. So,
absolutely.
Unbelievable. Well, I know that obviously men also do get breast cancer. But do you have any daughters?
I do.
You do. And so, like, do they worry? Because now it was abuelita, titi, mom. Do they worry?
So I think that the worry is really, really low. I mean, I don't think I've really had this conversation with them, but I think because I had the genetic testing, my sister and I both had the genetic testing, that we know this is not something that we can pass to our, children, and, through our genes, right? What we know is that this is about lifestyle changes, right? Reducing the level of stress that you have, as women of color, right? We tend to take care of everything, right? We're the caregivers. And we're sort of in that sandwich sort of place, right? We take care of our kids and we take care of our parents, right? And so I think, because we know that it's not in our genes, they're a little bit more, but definitely knowing that we've got to make some changes as to how we respond to this world and how we engage, right, in this world, and what are the foods that we are consuming. And we have to create more of that, the new word is balance, right? We've got to find more of that balance. But now more than ever, I subscribe to that. There are just some things now where it's just like, I'm not going to get involved in that. I'm choosing not to put my energy into that, because that's not going to serve me well. And I need to figure out for me where those limits are. And I think, this past year with, treatment, right, and returning back to work, right, figuring all of those things, out. And sometimes I feel like I'm doing great. Yeah. And then other times I'm like, I'm going back to that, old way, and I've got to pull myself, out of it. But I would hope that I'm leaving an example for my daughters, in that you don't have to, be all and be in everything, right? There, you can check out. You can choose not to be a part of things. You can choose these are not roles that you must take. Exactly. Right? You can say no. My hope is that, they're seeing those changes, and in those changes, that they're going to be making some changes for themselves as well. Yeah. So,
I did work as an outreach breast health individual for, I'm going to say, maybe 8 or 9 years. And, my job was to go into the neighborhoods and convince, the Black and brown population to get the free mammograms and, teach them about preventive care. I mean, I walked around with a suitcase with breast models, so and I taught them how to do the, the at home care. And I remember, speaking of generations, the older generation says, no, I'm not, I've never had a mammogram. It's the mammogram that gives you cancer. I went from that to convincing them, not, and, making relationships with, I started off with the churches, where they provided some space after their day of service. And I would bring the crew from the hospital over, and they would have the free breast exam, pap smear, mammogram, and their blood pressure and all of that, taken as well. So I was building that trust and with them and the practice, because there's a lot of times it's the barriers, right? Sometimes we say that it's generation, that it's myths and so forth, but many of them I did find that they really wanted to. They just couldn't get there. There's a lot of, they didn't have the funds to catch the bus. They were raising their grandchildren. They couldn't leave the home, so there were a lot of barriers where, so we came to them. And then fast forward today, now there's this mobile mammography out there, so I remember when all of that was just a wish, and now it's out there. So
to make it much more easier, much more accessible.
Exactly.
To include women who are underinsured or uninsured.
Uninsured, exactly. So the lesson learned as well, through that whole process is, just if you're a female and you have breasts, then you could get breast cancer. The difference was, the Black and brown community, because they didn't do the preventive care, mammogram, self-exams at home, and so forth, by the time they found out, they were, the end stages, or it had metastasized, where, the other population, who have insurance, or the funds to, to take care of it, did the regular checkups. And so, yeah, they too, would be diagnosed with breast cancer, but they were detected early, as yours was.
Right.
So that's really the conversations and the teachings amongst the Black and brown community. I have to say, I think since then, in the city of Hartford, there's been a grand change, because some of those women, even today, when they see me, and I don't remember, like they'll remember me, but I can't remember. There's so many, like, oh my gosh, I remember when, and I go by myself now, so it makes it's very rewarding to know that, they've taken that charge, in their lifestyle for, on their own.
And that this is self-care.
And it is self-care.
It's self-care. It's just like you would care for your child, right? Just like you would care for a family member. You have to put the time in to take care of you, right? And I think, planning it, whether it's around your birthday, right? Like, I'm not going to forget, and this is my gift to me. And so now with, October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I tend to send out a photo of myself to my, closest friends and families to say, this is a reminder if you haven't already. It's time. And then they'll text me back, right? And they'll say, oh, thank you for the reminder. I'm calling the doctor right now. But it's important. And I think that, we have to make that switch to say, there are services that are definitely out there. And we do have health insurance that will cover preventive care. And we need to make sure that this is something that we are checking, because the earlier, right? The earlier right? The better. And I was very lucky, because they found it very, very early for me. And it doesn't have to not be something that, we're not doing for ourselves, right? It's just, we just have to make that choice.
We do.
I make the choice to put on my clothes each and every morning. I make the choice to, put on my earrings, which glasses am I going to wear today? Am I going to wear glasses or not? We make those choices, and we need to make the choice of saying, this is important, because the earlier they find it, the better, if it's going to happen, right? And I think the other thing to remember too is, making better choices with what we eat. Making better choices to take care of our bodies, right? To exercise, whatever that motion is going to be for you. But making the choice as well to not always be the person that is holding on to all of the negative energy, in life, right? To learn how to identify, other practices that can help us to release those things, so that we're not holding on to this energy into our body and just creating this toxic place where this should be the most clean place that we have. We're going to clean house. Let's start with cleaning, right? Our bodies first. And let's dedicate, that time to learning. What are the foods? There are things that I don't eat dairy anymore because of the inflammation, right? I've learned that it doesn't work for my body anymore. So why keep putting it in there?
Right, yes.
You know, am I going to cheat every now and again? Yes, I'm going to do that because I'm only human.
Right.
But it's not going to be with the regularity that I
Sure.
had before. And so taking the time to really just say, I'm going to do this for me, and it's okay. It's not selfish.
Right.
I think for a long time that was the message that we had, right? That it was being selfish, and it's not being selfish.
No.
It's loving thyself.
I was going to say it's quite opposite.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
the opposite effect of that.
Exactly.
So you've chosen holistically to change your lifestyle physically and what you eat and your exercising. You mentioned earlier that there was a part of you because you had actually made that decision before your diagnoses, and so you were just angry with that, you know, when you received it, what's going on? I'm making the change,
Right.
and then this, you know,
Right.
I can just imagine. So what holistic approach, what modality did you utilize to diffuse the anger? Because I think when women, and I just say just humans, you know, when they do get diagnosed, whether it's breast cancer or colon or whatever it is, the one feeling, emotion that really, I believe, is my experience with family, friends, that just sticks around is the anger part, and that can. How did you deal with that, and how do you continue to deal with that? Because I've seen it go down, like go bad, really bad. And then others have like spurts, you know. Yeah, they have spurts, and maybe that's just it. But what approach have you taken, and that worked for you? Because it'll be different for everyone. So, but that someone can take away as far as your approach.
So I will say that I didn't have just one approach. And I think part of it was because I had a background in marriage and family therapy, right? Like I had this training that I could fall back on. But it was a number of things, right? So going for walks on the beach was where I could let it all out.
Sure.
Right? I could cry out there, right? I could detox, right? I can go out there and I can cry and I can go for walks, but there's something about just being in that ocean view that is very healing for me.
Okay.
I will say that I sought out talking to other survivors. Because it was important for me to have an understanding. No one's journey is going to be like another's journey. But I think there's sort of this understanding of I get it, right? I get it in that place where there are no words to describe, right? What that is.
It's that unspoken words, but that understanding.
Right, right. And so I brought in sort of those individuals who can kind of be my confidants, where they were going to understand me at a level where no one else could, as much as they loved me and as much as they were, you know, praying for me and right by my side. And I have to say that I am super, super blessed to have a strong family support system, good friends, right? Good colleagues, survivors, you know, that were around me, that I felt that they kind of gave me the energy and the space to go through whatever it was that I needed to. There were times where I just needed to be by myself. I didn't want to talk and I didn't want to be around other people.
And that's okay.
And everyone respected that, right? That it was just like, I'm turning the phone off and I don't want to talk because I needed to be in that space where I could listen. I think oftentimes we surround ourselves with lots of noise, right? Lots of things to distract us.
Of course.
And I needed to turn. There were moments where I needed to turn that off because I needed to listen to me.
Yes.
And I needed to find out, what did I need in that moment?
Yes, yes.
and give myself those things that I
right.
needed. You know, there were times where I was going away to dinner all by myself because that's what I needed in that moment. And then, you know, just my faith, right? Leaning on my faith when I needed to lean. And then, you know, also using other modalities. You know, I've just started attending sound healing classes, and, you know, that's new for me, and it's beautiful. And it's just exploring that, you know, what works, not being afraid of it, you know, can do the yoga here, and I can do the meditation here, and, you know, I can open up my Bible and, you know, read my scriptures. But, you know, I can try these other modalities and they feel right. Right? They feel good. And as long as they feel good, and they're keeping me in that space where don't want to hold on to the negativity, I've got to just let it go, then that's what I do. So I can't say it was just one thing. I felt like it was a few different things, but my main thing was turning off the sound and just being quiet and not being afraid to listen to what the inner me was thinking, was feeling, and, you know, just giving her that space to say, I hear you. Yep, I'm listening. You don't want to do that today? We're not going to do that. You just want to sleep today? We're going to go ahead and sleep. You want to go to the beach today? We're going to the beach today. You want to go eat by yourself? We're going to go do that. Right? It was just all of those little things that felt like, okay, this is right for me. And so no cookie cutter anything. Right? And I would encourage other women, you know, to do the same, right? To figure out what that is, to allow themselves to explore that for them. And to do your research. You know, oftentimes people mean well. And, you know, even when I was exploring, you know, treatment and you know, talking to, you know, different teams, and I had all these questions that were coming, you know, at me. And in so many ways, I think this is what you should do. It's like, thank you.
Right.
Thank you for your opinion. Yeah, but I knew where it was coming from, right? It's coming from a place of love. And so that's where I had to hear it. And but I had to choose what was right for me. And I knew for me, I didn't want to make a decision out of fear. I did not want fear to be the thing that was guiding my decisions. And so I wanted to be informed. And so if I had to ask the question 5 different ways to get the same answer, that was okay, because I wanted to make sure that I understood and that, you know, that this treatment, this is forever, right? I don't get to erase it. I don't get to take it back. I don't get to undo it. You know, once you make the decision, it's permanent. And so it was important for me to make sure that if I was going to make a decision, that it was a decision that I thoroughly thought through, you know, the good, the bad, that I thoroughly thought through, that weighed, you know, my options and felt like, okay, this is where I'm going to go and this is what I'm going to do.
Well, Elby, first and foremost, how lucky am I to be part of your sound healing journey?
Thank you.
Love having you in class. So how lucky
you.
am I to have you there? And I feel, and you know, we have another partnership because I promise you, I am a member of Latinas in Motion.
We're going on a hike this Saturday.
Sorry. But you know, I'm very lucky now that yet you're on, you know, you agreed to come on my platform, the GyrlSense show, where I love to bring women so they can share their story, their background, and so forth. And of course, this is a different take because, you know, but I do want to bring the awareness and how lucky for them to have you be the one to share your story that they can take away. I will be providing all the numbers for the services that you mentioned, either for the generations, the different generations, as well as any breast health type of service as well. So I will be providing that at the end, at the credit. But I do want to thank you.
Thank you.
You are such an inspiration. Again, thank you for sharing your story. And I just want to welcome you. Welcome to the GyrlSense family.
Thank you. The pleasure was mine. I was honored when you asked.
Yes.
But you know, this is obviously something that is near and dear to me. It is a part of my story.
Yes.
And for those who need a perspective, who want a perspective, for those who are just hearing, you know, about their, you know, diagnosis and just need someone to be present with them.
Yes.
You know, find your circle.
Yeah.
Look for your information. You know, don't feel like you can't ask questions. This is your temple, your body. And so it's just so important that you really have a full understanding of, you know, what the next steps are going to be. So, you know, I just encourage women to get yourself checked.
That's it. That really is. It's a simple
checked.
process. Just get yourself, you know, go for that mammogram, do the self-checks at home, and, you know, we can work with that, and whatever comes about that, we can find an early detection, you know, is
especially
really the
because
key.
the rates of women with dense breasts is very, very high.
Yes.
And, you know, you can't tell when you're doing the self-exams
That's
at
true.
home all of the time.
Exactly.
And so if you can find it before there's, you know, that lump, why not?
Why not? Well, once again, thank you so much, Elby. I'm Maria del Carmen. Join us again for more GyrlSense.